Dobrodošli u Digitalnu kavu. Ja sam Ivan Brkan, glavni urednik Netokracije. Danas ćemo govoriti o tome što se događa sa mobilnim plaćanjem, što se događa s bankama, kako ćete vi plaćati, ali kako ćemo isto u budućnosti zapravo vidjeti kako se banke i telekomi prilagođavaju. Tu imamo jednog eksperta i sad ću se prebaciti na engleski, jer još nije naučio hrvatski, ali polako naučit ćemo ga sve prostote koje možemo. Daniel, hello. I basically told all your secrets now in 2 minutes. I hope that's.
I wish I knew Croatian.
No! Actually, he said that you should learn Croatian. I'll teach you all the swear words.
Oh, thank you.
So to start, who are you and where are you coming from? And what is Auka? It sounds like a Croatian word, actually.
Well, that's actually funny. It's an Old Norse word, so it's a Viking language, and it means to increase or intensify more of. So it's quite a strong word. I'm Daniel Döderlein. I'm the founder and CEO of Auka. We used to be called Mcash back in the day. We were the first company to bring mobile payments into the Norwegian market.
Nice.
Today we're called Auka. It's the same company, same shareholders, same great technology. We're just selling it white label to banks and telcos, whoever wants to bring digital payments into their market.
Awesome. Sounds like a very interesting. Actually, market has been changing. So what you're doing now and what you've just done is released a report on mobile payments in Croatia. So if we need to summarize everything that we can learn from the report, what's the big news?
Well, the report in itself is not big news. The report in itself looks into the market and analyzes the key indicators whether or not the market is ready for mobile payments. So what we've done is that we were the first to develop this type of technology in the Nordics, and we were the first to launch it in Norway. And this part of the world, together with the Asian part of the world, with Alipay in China, are in the forefront of accepting mobile payments and adopting mobile payments in the market. So what we've done is that we've learned from these markets, and we've looked for the key indicators. So what is happening in the market that indicates that the market is ready for mobile payments. And then we do the same, and we look at various markets across Europe, because that's our target market. And what we've found here in Croatia is that mobile adoption is growing, and smartphone penetration is growing. Your economy is getting back on its feet. There is a startup scene here, but you have a very cash-heavy economy, which is very interesting. Many might see that as a
interesting, yeah.
Many
Why do you accept just cash?
Yeah, many might see that as a challenge when you're bringing in a new way of paying. We see it as a tremendous opportunity, because the moment you go from cash to digital, the larger the cash economy, the larger the opportunity, right? And I had this very interesting conversation coming over here. We were in this taxi, and you still have Uber, which is great. And I love that. I think it's a great example of sort of how these digital ways of paying really makes lives a lot easier, both for us as people using taxis, but then also for the taxi drivers. They also have the taxi signs on top of their cars. So I guess they operate both ways. Maybe it's because the regulation that they have to have
It's actually a really recent regulation that they need to have the taxi signs,
Right. But I asked him, and he said, I also drive as a normal taxi whenever I can. Now, what do you prefer? And he's like, actually, I prefer this. So he prefers the digital way for multiple reasons. One of them being, you don't have to carry any cash. You don't have to do the exchange of funds. There's no risk involved, right? Because you always get paid if you have the person in the car. So there was so many subtle, clear, but still clear benefits for the driver. And I love it because I don't want to deal with local money, right? I travel a lot, so you don't want to carry a lot of cash. And I think that's a great example of how digital payments really creates opportunities.
Where do you see the actual, what are some examples from the Nordics and from Asia of real life scenarios besides the one that you mentioned with Uber about using mobile payments in everyday life? Because what we have here in Croatia, it's a tourist-intensive country, is that you pay for coffee with cash mostly, right? Or in a restaurant, etc., etc. What changes with accepting mobile payments in the way the Nordics and Asia did?
Yeah, so there's two sides to this story. The one side is the consumer side. So why would you and I have an app on our phone that sort of liberates money and makes it easily accessible?
No idea.
Right? So why would we? Now, the interesting part of this story is that when you look at the Nordics, and specifically Norway, I mean, we are world champions in card payments, or we used to be. And we're kind of spoiled, right? Everyone is rich, everyone has access to all the technology and everything. So you could imagine that it wouldn't be a really big incremental change for people to go from whatever they used before to using mobile payments because they have everything. Yeah. But the reality is that small incremental change made it so convenient for people to exchange funds that now virtually everyone is doing it. And I think the same dynamics apply anywhere in the world. So if I owe you some money, or if we have a friend and we go to a birthday party and we need to split the bill because you paid for the gift and I want to pay you back, these like small everyday exchanges of funds, they actually happens quite frequently. But we don't necessarily think about it because we have a payment culture and we're just used to doing what we're doing. But mobile payments really solves that problem because you can send money to anyone, anywhere. And the anywhere part is quite interesting because you are not bound to local proximity. I don't have to sit right next to you. You can be at the bar with your friend. but you could be at the bar with your friends, or we have mutual friends, and then for some reason you need the money that I owe you, and you can ask for it, and I can send it to you, and then you can go and buy the beer that you want to have. Yeah. You don't need that physical proximity, and that has really changed the way people in the Nordics pay. And we actually have some research in Norway that shows us that the amount that you need to owe your friend is about 27 Norwegian kroners, which is just short of €3. If you owe your friend €3, that's the magical number where people will ask for the money back digitally. They will send you a request and say, hey, you owe me this money. Yeah. So that's the consumer side of things. Now, on the merchant side, and this is where it becomes very powerful, and it's universal. It happens in the Nordics, and it's happened in China. It's starting to happen in the US as well, with both Venmo going now on merchant payments, and also the banks trying to catch up with their proposition called Sell. What is happening as these digital payment systems, they transform the market from the ground up. So what we're used to with Apple Pay and Google Pay and all of these like larger payment services that are being rolled out is that they're talking about the convenience in a retail situation. So walking into a store and tapping and paying. Now, funny enough, that doesn't really solve a problem, because when you walk into a store and there is a card machine there, you could already pay with your card. Yeah. So you're the same person, it's the same queue, it's the same purchase, it's the same everything, it's just a change of dynamics. What mobile payments does is that it liberates the merchants from this physical hardware and the physical location for selling, so they can sell to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And all of these payment services have built from the ground up. That means that they start with like the taxi use case. They start with like the Uber moments for anything. So it could be ordering food, it could be ordering flowers, it could be you're on the beach and you want a beer, you don't have cash, but you could still buy from like the guy that sells beer on the beach. All of these use cases. We have a saying in Norwegian. We say many small rivers create like a big waterfall. I don't know if it translates that well. But the point is that when you take all of these small scenarios and you sum them up, it really adds up. And the funny thing is that they represent high frequency, because you buy a coffee, you buy a beer, you buy a lunch, you buy some snacks, you go out. All of these scenarios could be very well covered with mobile payments without the merchants having to buy a lot of hardware, without you having to get a special card or rely on a special phone. And that is what has really happened in all of these markets, is that the below 50% part of the merchant segment has really gotten their business revolutionized. And the bottom line is that they sell more. And that's why they like it.
How big is it the challenge to explain to merchants and to, for example, restaurants and cafes that, okay, this does make sense. It does make sense more than cash. Is it something that I wouldn't say happens overnight, or is it something that the whole ecosystem needs to work on?
Right. So yes, it's a hard story to tell. Like with anything brand new, you really need to think differently, right? It's a new muscle memory you need to develop for consumers, and it's a new way of thinking for merchants. Luckily, because this has happened elsewhere, we don't have to talk about this new future way of paying, because it's not actually the new future way of paying. It's now. It just hasn't happened here yet. Right? But it has happened elsewhere. So you can show them the examples. And this brings me back to the reason why it really makes sense for the merchants is because you sell more. So one of the examples, if you're a small, like let's say a pizza place, there's two ways you're selling today. People have to walk physically into your store, right? So you're limited to the number of people that actually walks by your store. Now the other way is that you can call the store. right?
Yeah.
Assuming you have some customer relationship somehow, it's still a fairly limited pool of people because you have to have given them sort of your menu, they have to find you, they have to know your number. And if people call, you have to have a guy that picks up the phone, you have to write down the order, you know, there's mistakes. And as a merchant, you're still in a situation where you take a lot of risk. Because what happens if you don't show up? Who loses the money? The merchant do, right? Now, we might not think about these scenarios, but when you're a merchant, when 5% of your revenue is lost because people don't show up, it actually happens like every day for every merchant. And you can't really reach out or branch out from these two pools of people. Now, in a mobile payment scenario, if we were sitting here right now and I feel kind of hungry, I was up early this morning and we wanted to grab a bite. If I flicked up my phone and I started a mobile payment app, I would find a marketplace in that app that would show me all the nearby merchants. And I would engage with them. I would look at their menu. I would place my order. It's like Uber for food. And that's just one example. It applies to every type of merchant. So I would prepay, so there's no risk on the merchant side. I would edit, you know, my orders, so there's no risk on my side that I would get the wrong pizza. And even though I've never been to the store, I get guidance over the maps. I can go downstairs and I can pick up the pizza menu and I can go and eat. That's a customer that the pizza store would never have reached in the traditional way. And that's very powerful. It's just like the Uber example. I think that's the fundamental difference in these mobile payment scenarios is that customers come to merchants because they do it digitally. They can be anywhere. They don't need to know the merchant. And when you demo that, and I do that, I mean, I built this from the ground up. I had a long journey, like educating people about mobile payments. And when you bring the solution into a store and you demo it for a merchant, you should, I mean, it's precious, right? When you see their eyes and you're like, I can be online here. I can be in the pockets of every consumer. Everyone is my potential client. You know? And that's very powerful. So I would say that you're liberating money and you're enabling local commerce. You're really enabling people to do business in a better way. And depending on who launches the service and how it's constructed, it's typically also cheaper than accepting credit cards. So there's an economical incentive as well.
You mentioned based on who launches the service. What do you mean by that, and how do banks or telecoms fit into these scenarios?
Yeah, so I mean, Auka has a vision to digitize money and make it universally available and useful for people. That's why we exist. Now, in order to reach out to as many people as humanly possible with a piece of technology and a service that we know works, we have to choose the right partners. Right? So what we do is that we bring this technology and these services into a market together with a partner. Right? So we choose a partner that really believes in the vision, that really wants to help people, and also potentially then grab a market position. There is a commercial aspect here as well. It's quite valuable to own these channels and to operate them. So we're looking for that type of partner that wants to bring a proven piece of technology into Croatia. And that means that we're engaging with banks, we're engaging with telcos, whoever has massive distribution and believes in the vision could be potential partners of ours.
So from the mobile payment report that you published, 1/4 of bankers actually think that tech companies can be a threat to banks in the mobile payment space and in general in the digitalization of their sector. Why do you think everyone else doesn't think so? Why do you think that's the right, not the right scenario, but what's going to actually play out potentially?
Oh, that's a big question. So again, learning from the Nordics and looking at what has happened there. So rather than trying to sort of crystal ball it, let's look at the actual facts. So what has happened in the Nordics is that the banks decided to launch a mobile payment solution, more or less like Alipay, right? And the reason why they did it is predominantly because they want to build a wall around their country to defend themselves against newcomers and new competition. So their strategy was quite simply, let's saturate the market with a really good service. I mean, we've provided technology to power some of these very successful schemes, so it is a very good service, but it's a fairly protective move. And they've been very successful at doing it. So the concept is basically, if I'm the bank and I'm giving you as the customer and you know the merchants all the services that they want, they will be happy, so that whenever somebody else that I don't know yet will enter the market, the consumers and the merchants will say, "Meh, I already have this. I'm happy," right? So I think that's the fundamental concept. Now, in terms of whether or not Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, and others are going to try to eat the bank's lunch, I think the answer to that is yes. Now, to what extent, we don't know yet. But what we do know, again, looking at the facts, Facebook has a license in the EU out of Ireland. So that means that they can passport that to any country, including Croatia. They could launch their payment services in Croatia legally starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a 2-week notice that you have to give to the regulator, but that's passporting for you. So it means that Facebook could do that tomorrow. Google can do the same because they have the same license. Apple has partnered with a bank, and they're building international relationships with other banks in order to reach out to an international market. So that's what they can do. Now, what have they done? So Facebook has launched payments in Messenger, we know, right? And they're testing it around Europe as well. When you look at Apple, so Apple Pay, NFC-based, was not really a big success. There's a lot of media attention and everyone talks about it, but the reality is that even Starbucks, the payment app from Starbucks, is more popular and have more frequent users than Apple Pay do in the US. So I think it's a strong indicator of what people would like to have. Right? They don't want to clunk their phone. They want this new and better shopping experience, basically the Uber moment for anything. Because of that realization, Apple has started to look into P2P services, as we know, right, with their Apple Card. So they're going the same way as the Nordic successful schemes. They're basically all replicating this. Now, the most interesting thing is Google. Google went to India, and in India we saw a piece of legislation coming from the government that resembles PSD2 a lot. So what they basically said is that we want to abolish cash, and we're enforcing a new piece of legislation on the banks that they need to open up their APIs, basically. So what happened in India? Google very silently launched a service called Tess. They didn't even brand it Google, it was just Tess. I think it was in the first 2 months they got 50 million users, and the last report that was issued is that they're dealing with close to 70% of all the m-commerce, so all mobile payments is Tess done. So they've already done it. They already have the technology. They already have copied sort of the success coming out of the Nordics that we've been powering, and then again from Alipay. So it's not a question of if they're going to challenge. The big question is when. And we know that PSD2 is being enforced in September 2019. Then you actually have to open up all the APIs. Whether or not they're going to step into traditional financial services, nobody knows because they haven't done it yet and nobody's talking about it. But in terms of giving you beautiful interfaces, enabling you to do mobile payments, targeting merchants and consumers, they've already done it. Right, so it's just a question on when they're going to replicate that into various markets and why. Why would they choose various markets? Maybe for the same reasons that we are targeting the markets. They're mature, economy's growing, people have smartphones, people use social media. There's good mobile reception. There's many parameters, and also cash economy, right? So there's many of the guys that we talk with that say, well, this is a very cash-driven economy, so it's probably going to be hard to digitize it. Well, look at India.
Yeah,
it's like, well, that argument doesn't work, man. So reality hits you, and I think that bringing us back to what the bankers are thinking. I think it's a lack of understanding, not because they don't want to understand, but it's very hard to understand what is going to happen tomorrow when you're not really informed. When you look at what has happened in the Nordics, I think a lot of people got really surprised about the adoption rates and how fast it actually saturated the market. But the technology is there. The experience is there. You have guys like us powering these type of initiatives. We can just turn it on. It's provided as a software as a service solution. So, I mean, if a telco or a bank would like to go live in 3 weeks, we could probably pull it off, right? Thank you for that one. And I think that's very hard for a banker to understand, that a market can really make those leapfrogs.
So fast.
But we've seen it before. One thing is for certain is that these guys, they're here to eat some of the lunch of the bankers, most definitely, and they have done it already.
So on the other hand, looking from the bank perspective, they let's not say they have a lot of time, but they do have, if we look at PSD2, they do have an advantage of a little bit of time to develop their services because they don't need to open their APIs yet.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, that's one of our key arguments, is that we're again looping back to the Nordics and seeing what has happened, the strategical move to build that wall around your country by you can call it a wall. That's like the tactics, but the reality is that you're bringing good services to people and businesses. Yep. And there is this window of opportunity for the bankers. As you said, they don't have to open up their APIs just yet. And that means that nobody can come into the market and aggregate everything and sort of serve everyone in an easy way. So using that window of opportunity makes a lot of sense. So if I were a banker, I would say, okay, there is a piece of technology out there that's proven. We know from other markets that this is how you do it. There is a playbook. You don't have to reinvent everything yourselves, and you can turn it on and you can protect yourself. But it's not only protection; it's also a great business opportunity because when you launch a mobile payment service. What you typically do if you want to follow the blueprint of success is that you make it available for everyone. It's not a service from your bank to you. It's a service from someone to everyone. So you attack the whole market. That means that
it's not limited.
It's not limited, which is a great customer acquisition play. I would assume that your group of friends use various banks, various telcos, various type of phones, right? So if you can get all of them to use your service, that's the first step in building a very strong relationship with these people and eventually making them your customers.
A very good argument for a bank or a telecom to work.
Absolutely. And this is not some far distant future. It's proven. It has happened in all the other markets. So the question is who is going to take that position, not if or when. Right.
So thank you, Daniel, for the interview. Lajkajte, subscribajte se i naravno pratite Netokraciju pa da vidimo šta će dogoditi s mobilnim plaćanjem. Ćao!